It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our Bible study about death, dying, and life everlasting. We have today the subtitle, End Time Deceptions. We have seen that the plan of redemption covers 7,000 years. Satan and his angels were sentenced to death when they had their rebellion in heaven, when they were expelled because of their inability to come back, because they destroyed their mind completely. They could not be anymore saved. But when man fell, God had a plan of salvation to save him. And this plan includes that Christ has to come 3 times on earth to finish this process. Since man died when they ate, they separated from God forever. Christ came to destroy, to kill Adam on the cross. That old life had to be made away forever. And he created out of a clean life the new man. That's what Christ did for all. And so he gives all the people the opportunity to give up the old dead life in order to choose the new one. So that's the choice that was given to the dead person. You give up, you die on the cross eternally for that old life because it is irrecuperable. And by faith you take the new life and live by it. And so when the first deaths appear, every human being can experience it either being dead or being alive. That means, as all are born dead, they must just remain in that state when they enter the first death, the sleep. Then they will arise from this sleep as being dead. Or those who have destroyed death by the cross will arise in the new life, and when they fall into the sleep, they will fall in that sleep being alive. That's why there are 2 resurrections. The first resurrection is the resurrection of the living one. So they are of the living who hold judgment in heaven for 1,000 years. The first resurrection of the living. That's so important to understand because they went into this sleep, which the Bible calls the first death a sleep. They are just there for the time until they come to resurrection. But they are alive because they have the new life of Christ. They destroyed the old life. They gave it up. But all those who have not given up the old life and have killed it on the cross, they will resurrect at the second resurrection when at the third coming of Christ, there is the resurrection of the dead to carry out the death sentence over them, which is the lake of fire. So this is a simple overview of the plan of redemption and even the timeline. And the question is, where are we now? And we are just here, shortly before the second coming of Christ. And that's why we need to know the time in which we are living. And the deception, all deceptions, have one purpose, and that is to keep man in the state in which he was born. He does not need to become saved or go to the cross. He just needs to keep him in the state in which he was born. And of course, we might say, okay, also those who have been once saved. But it's hard for them to deceive them when they are in the truth. So the purpose of all deceptions is to keep man in the state which he's born. And of course, as time is approaching the last chance to keep people in death, he intensifies his efforts. And since man was made only for good needs, he always shows up as an angel of light. He comes to help. He has solutions for diseases. He comes to give you the right medication. He has the whole interest in your life. That's how he shows himself up. Because he wants to do everything just to keep you in a state in which you are born. You should never realize the desperate state in which you're born. You should not cry out, "Oh, wretched man who I am, who will save me from this body of death?" know that he wants to avoid by all means. And it doesn't matter what he uses, but he must do it by a good reason, by a good need. If not, his deception will not work. But before we go into the details of the deception, let us first look to the time in which we live, because it says end time deceptions. Now, where are we in time of the world's final events? I think this is important. That's why prophecy was given us. That's why Christ gave us Matthew 24 and those things. So where are we in time of the world's final events? We are in between Jerusalem 66 AD and Jerusalem 70 AD. We remember that history, the Roman army came and wanted to take over Jerusalem, but suddenly they departed. And the Jewish people ran over after them and were coming back conquerors. And this was the sign for those who were in Jerusalem, the Christians, that this was the sign to flee from Jerusalem. They did not know the time when that army would come back, but it was their time to flee. It was 3.5 years in between, but they fled immediately. I don't know if some might have think, oh, maybe it was a mistake that we fled, because look, the Romans didn't come back. But they were in the faith. They knew the judgment over Jerusalem would come. Like we know the judgment over this world will come. That's why they didn't return back to Jerusalem. And when the army came, it destroyed Jerusalem. And there was no mercy in that, what the Roman soldiers did. Now, what has this to do with us today? Well, Jesus compares it to his second coming. And I don't know of no event in history that such a thing like what happened to us, what happened to the world in March 2020 ever happened before. So I see it's now an army not of physical soldiers, but it's an army of proclamation of a danger in which you have to believe you are. So it's a faith matter. In March 2020, the world was united in a faith. It united all churches, it united all states, almost. It's united all institutions. It was a fantastic thing. Never happened before. For me, this is the army that comes around Jerusalem. Since we have not a physical thing where the battle is, it has just a spiritual thing. The end time battle must be a spiritual battle, not a physical one. It will include also physical war, but the battle itself is a one of in whom do you believe, what you believe. And the world was confronted with a faith that is there. And it was propagated. But suddenly, the armies go back. And it looks like it's over. But we know. Because we know the judgment of the world is at hand. We know it's not over. It is still there. The world in October 2023. Will it look like the armies of Jerusalem 70 AD? Now some people might say, well, that's time setting. Not really, because I'm not interested in a time setting. I have read Daniel 11 and 12 again and again, and I also read it lately to see if I find something more clear for my understanding. And I must say, things might be simple, but not so easy to be understood. But I have understood something. Verse 10, Daniel 12. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. So the pattern, the problem is one internal. Because not outside washing. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. It's the same thing like at the time of 66 AD, when the wise ones moved out from Jerusalem. So the wise ones in our days cannot move out of a physical place. Even some move out in more secluded places, which is not bad. But we will see even that will not help, because you take your heart with you. And you must be cleansed in your heart. Because the fleeing from Jerusalem, which meant at that time, today is fleeing out of the deception of your heart, of the Babylon that is in your heart. We cannot flee an institution outside. We only can flee a state of mind. Because now faith has been revealed in what people put their faith. So we must flee from the inner thing. We must be purified from inside. Because in the inside we have the problem. And for this we must know the timing. And I believe that we are living exactly in this period between 66 AD and 70 AD Jerusalem. We will see how things come. We will see if the things in Daniel 12 will be like some people say, will repeat themselves. I'm not sure about that, but I'm sure of something. I'm sure of the pattern, that what need to be understood is to be understood the time window we have to flee. It's not any fleeing, it's the last fleeing. It's the last thing to come out. It's not any other. That's why I believe we are just in between these two events. It comes to my eyes very clearly. And I know now how things will come. Yes, when the army comes back, they will have more army than they have here. They have been, this time they are better prepared for everything. There will be everything settled. So then there will be no return, no fleeing. Jerusalem will be encountered, the world will be there, and no one can flee anymore from the deception of his heart, because it will be so overwhelming, none will see through anymore if they would have not seen it before. So, the world at the flood. I want to show that this time in between always existed. So there was a time in between the entering of the animals into the ark and the time of entering Noah and his family into the ark. That is the time in between, that time window in between is the situation in which we are now. We have seen the animals going into the ark. And now the question is, do we see the time to enter the ark before the army comes back? This time is a time of peace, because everyone needs to do his decision by understanding, by faith, not based on fear, not based on external factors, just knowing I do it because it's right. I believe it because it's right. So this is our window between the entering of the animals, and the last call, and the closing of the door. The door will be closed, and then no one can enter the ark anymore. Then the rain will fall. Then the army comes back, and there will be no return. It's the last night of Sodom and Gomorrah. The time window in between. Those angels came to save Lot and his family. That night in which he could go and say to his family, come out because Sodom will be destroyed by tomorrow. And they laughed about him, like they laughed about Noah. But not for long. It's a short time window. It's a time of grace. That's the last time of grace. Remember Lot's wife, Jesus said, even thus shall it be in the days when the Son of Man is revealed. That's when he's coming. That's our days. That's us, our life. In that day, if ye shall be upon the housetop and his stuff in the house, let him not come down to take it away. And he that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. Remember Lot's wife. Not by chance, God made her a pillar of salt. Because, you see, she went out, but her heart was still in Sodom and Gomorrah. That's why she had to look back. And God wants to make us very aware of this danger, that our heart may betray us, that we might flee to the mountain and still be in the heart in Babylon or in Sodom and Gomorrah. It doesn't matter how we call it. It's the same state. Remember Lot's wife. Because she fled, but it didn't help her because her heart was not changed. And that matters. We are in the time of the parable of the invited guests in Matthew 22, 1-14. This man invites the guests to his son's wedding, but the guests refuse to come. They refuse the messengers. They even, some of them, kill them. Say, let us alone. We have no time to come to this wedding. And so he must say, go to the hedges, to the roads and to the hedges, and bring in all you can find. We are in that time in which the called, the invited one, reject his call. That's our time. And when that is over, God will give the invitation of the previously uninvited. It's not that he does not invite the whole world, but he chose first his people that should come to him and be that example to invite the others. But this people has never listened to him in history. Will they listen today? The parable says, no. They have all kinds of excuses. There are more important things to do. So they reject the invitation. They reject the last race of grace. The last race. And then the invitation will be done to the previously uninvited. And they fill in the room. They will take the place. Those who have not searched for God will find him. And those who have searched or who wanted him, obviously, they will not have him because they haven't understood the problem of their heart. So this is the time in which we are. We are in the time when the 5 wise virgins prepare their lambs. They will not be taken by surprise. I mean, being unprepared. They take it serious because they await the command to stand up and illuminate the world's Redeemer to come, to bring the light to those who have not been initially invited yet, but now they're ready to invite the whole world to the marriage supper of the Lamb. they prepare now. It's their last time to prepare. The time of the last trial is not a long time. It always was short. It always was short because it doesn't need to be long. Because you see, things, our decisions, when the judgment comes, people have for long taken their final decision. That's why the time of the trial is short. And it must be a time of peace, because God doesn't want to have a service of fear. Oh, because now I fear, now I come back to God and do what I can do. No. That does God not want. That's why He brings the armies, He lets the animals go in and gives His last call. He sends the angel to give us the last help. It must be in peace. It must be in time when you are not yet there, encountered in that battle. Because we have seen when this crisis started, it found us unprepared. At least me, I was not prepared so that I have stood in all things correctly. So I had to learn. And I'm so glad for this crisis, because it revealed my issues that I still have, so that I can remove them and be ready and be sealed for the next time when the armies will come. But it must be in peace. I might think, oh, it's all gone. Let's return back to the old life. No, friends. There will be no back to the old life. Even though I liked it before. The way God helped me to travel the world and be in places, it was nice. I liked it. And sometimes I think, oh, it would be nice to come back. But it won't come back. We need, in this last trial that we are in peace, take our final decision. And the time of our last trial is not obvious. People didn't know when they were judged. People didn't know when their last chance was there, because they were ignorant of that. The people of Jerusalem didn't know when Jesus entered Jerusalem as a king on that foal of an ass. That was their last days. That was their last day of grace, where they could accept Him. They were not aware of that. So let us be very clear about the time we're living in. We don't know the time window, but we know it's the last trial. Now, we have to give a few definitions about deception. What is a deception? A deception is something that is believed to be true, real, that is a lie, or is unreal. Now we have to give a definition for the lie. What is a lie? A lie is defined as an attempt to make an impossibility possible. That's always so. So, to attempt to make an impossibility possible is the lie. The devil wanted to become a god. Adam wanted to become a god. They deceived themselves. They lied to themselves, trying to change an impossibility to something possible, which is in the world of God, in His creation, never possible. So every lie has the root of making an impossibility possible. What does the deception contain? The deception contains one or more human needs, like we have seen, we have either for health or for peace or whatever, but it focuses on the outside factors. So the outside factors are the one that we need to avoid. That's why we wash our hands or do certain things, because the outside factors are the problem. I just spoke with a mother who has a young child, and the father uses something, the phone, to show the young child some nice pictures. And the child likes it. And when it doesn't get it, it becomes angry. And so mother is angry about her husband and about the phone, thinking that there is the problem. But the problem is in the heart of the child. The deception always comes with a need that the child has. But I must help the child to see how that need needs to be satisfied, not keep it away from the danger of the outside factors. One of the main factor of deception is the focusing on outside factors, ignoring that the issue is inside of man, not outside of man. Now, who can be deceived? Only he can be deceived who first deceives themselves. So if we would have no self-deception, then we could not be deceived from outside. Humans were not deceivable except they deceived themselves. Adam and Eve deceived themselves before they took the lie of the devil and implemented them. If they would have never deceived themselves, they would have never taken the lie of the devil. So the same thing is for us. If in our hearts we would be in the truth, from outside we can never be deceived. Now these definitions would take us a long time to speak about them, but I just want to encourage you to study and deepen them for yourself. Deception for every human being. Here we have the picture of Jacob deceiving his father with outside factors. This is Jacob's voice, but the smell and the touching is Esau's. So he decided to follow the outside factors instead of following the inside factors, the voice that he knew was Jacob's voice, and believed him to be Esau and blessed him as though he would be Esau. So that's how deception works. The devil, who I put here as a net, a spider net, who comes and he has a net for everyone. He has one for the simple-minded person, for the learned, for the religious, and since I'm an Adventist, for the Adventists. He's very well prepared to deceive all of humanity. And his greatest deception for everyone is the ignorance of the law, the absolute spiritual dependency of any created element. Every effect must have a cause. That is ignored. We don't know the law of dependency. We might know the 10 Commandments, but if we don't understand what they mean, they are availing nothing, because an outside keeping of them is and remains worthless. Then not knowing the human being, its structure, its function, its needs. We don't know that he needs love. In all our health and our Adventist health system, love is inexistent as a factor for health. So we are deceived on all levels. And we believe that the cause of the problem is outside of man. We don't see that the cause of the problem is inside of man. We don't see the deception, the lie that is in the heart. We believe it's outside there, in outside beliefs, in outside doctrines, while the problem is just inside the man. So that's the deception for everyone. And he has made a great job, so to say, to bring all these things to be unknown to humanity. But there is also deception for the learned. The academics are in a very special situation because they have learned and see everything as very complicated. To explain them simple things, it's not possible. Then they rely on experts because they have learned to take over that what others have taught them. They are very obedient to authorities because they have learned to obey, not to think for themselves. This is the school system of the devil. That's why Jesus ignored it. He avoided it. He avoided to take his disciples from the system because he knew their mind would have been distorted like Judas' mind, Judas Iscariot. So there was one that he took from the academics, but that one he had to teach himself for 3.5 years in the desert. He had to bring him back by great effort so that he would be a disciple of him. But Paul could say, I was not taught by flesh and blood, but I was taught by Christ himself in the desert of Arabia. So the deception of the learned is they see themselves a high way up. They see themselves exactly the other way around like they are. Isn't that deception? It's great deception. And I could tell you the most impossible people to be saved are the learned ones, the academics. You would say, well, these are the intelligence of the people, yes. But their intelligence was removed by the school system to become believers of humans. That's why it's very hard to reach them, to get them to the point of understanding. But the deception of the religious, they like mysticism, they like miracles, they like appearances, they like subjective experiences, near-death experiences, and they like external forms. So miracles, appearances, visions, they have no validity. I mean, they can be experienced by a person, but they have no value in the way to make you sure it's correct what you believe or not correct. There is not there. But people like the outside experiences. They like subjective experiences. They like so-called illusions because it fits to their own heart's understanding. But coming closer to my people, because these are my people. I was grown Adventist. I'm an Adventist. And I believe God has called these people in this church for a special work. But unfortunately, they have become, like Jesus says in Matthew 15:8-9, citing from Isaiah 29:13. Wherefore the Lord said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth and with their lips, do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. This is a truth about my church, and probably about other denominations as well. Because we love to be taught by precepts of men. Why we at the same time think we are taught by God. But let's see, Adventists believes in science. They're science believers. Wow. They study science like they study the Bible. God never taught me studies from science. Never ever. Why? Because they are bound on a base that is a lie. But it looks like it is serious. They, scientists, so-called, they might be very serious in their attempt to search things. But I must know, as a child of God, what is reality, what is true and not. That's why I cannot believe in science. Because it has something that takes faith. And science should not take faith. Science should be something that is so because it is so. But Adventists are believers in this. And they don't see that's a deception. Especially my colleagues as physicians, when they come together, they don't speak about reality. They speak about what their study shows. Study shows. Shows nothing. than human precept. They like external forms. Yes, we base our understanding of worship on an outward form, of an outward attitude. We have not understood that worship is an inside attitude, not an outside attitude. We believe that worship is limited to 24 hours, the Sabbath. And this, I say, very serious. Because I see what happens in these last days in which we are. We all await an outward worship to be implemented on earth. And have not understood that this is already there. Because it's inside attitude, not an outside. See, the devil has nothing against you being circumcised. He had nothing against the people of Israel should be circumcised. Let them do it. They have their pain. If they don't change their heart, if they don't understand the meaning of circumcision, they're lost as anyone else is lost as well. He puts the form on baptism. You need to be baptized. And in some beliefs, they baptize the babies so that for sure they should be saved. We think an outward performance of something makes us saves us. Some people just put something on their head in order to pray, especially women, and they say it's from the Bible. I once had a lady I wanted to pray before I had the counseling with her, and she said, I have nothing to put on my head. And she had to go to search something to put on her head in order to be able to pray. I said, if this is the understanding, then if something should hinder me to come to God continually, then that understanding cannot be true. So we must understand that worship is an inside attitude, and by nothing external, it should be possible to be avoided. But if the devil gives us things to avoid, I cannot pray here because there is a cross on the wall or there is a sign or whatever, then we are all caught in that deception. But let's look to the Sabbath, because we have as church the Sabbath in the center. But unfortunately, we have it in the wrong center. That means we have put the Sabbath and take it just as a 24 hours day. Whenever we read Sabbath, we don't think on the meaning of Sabbath, but we think on the 24 hours from the week, the seventh day of the week. That's what we think when we read and hear Sabbath. And this is a deception which will destroy most of them. But this deception could only happen because somewhere they rejected the truth about the meaning of the Sabbath. The meaning of the Sabbath is very simple. It is the core of the law. It says who is God and who man is, a creature. And it says the relation to each other. That is a continual dependency, which means a continual worship, an inside binding of my heart to God. That's Sabbath. Sabbath is being connected, being one with God. That's its meaning. The same thing means circumcision and others, or baptism, where it says you have to die first and all the others. But the Sabbath meaning is to be dependent on God. It's the core of the law. It's everything in it. Now we have reduced it to 24 hours in the week, where we have to work, sustainable work and gathering work, and one day of the week, the seventh day of the week, God made to be a remembrance of an everlasting dependency. But we take it as an outside form, where we stop from gathering, where we continue to breathe and to eat and sustain life, and we should prove of acting selflessly throughout the week by keeping that day. But if we have not understood the meaning of the Sabbath, in the great controversy, never was the battle upon the physical or the outside objects. The battle was always about the meaning. The battle was always about the meaning. That people made out of things, and even Adventists made out of a day, an idol. And they don't even see it. Not understanding that it's not about the day, it's about the meaning. But how shall you explain it to them? This crisis has shown that they have no idea about the Sabbath, of its meaning. And whenever they read in the Bible or in the books of Ellen White, they just, when they read Sabbath, all they think is 24 hours, day of a week. And so they do not know the meaning of the Sabbath. And by not knowing the meaning of the Sabbath, there is 100% loss. You cannot be saved. How? Because this is the fulfilling of the law. This is to be one with God through Christ. But we wait in these end time events that the battle should be upon a 24-hour day. That's how we see it. We see worship as an outside attitude, not something that comes from inside and must be inside there. So the devil just fools most of us. Fools most of us. Those who know the meaning, they also keep the day. But those who keep the day might not know the meaning. But there might be people that have not understood, yes, the meaning even of the 24 hours, that still might know the meaning of being one with God. And they might also come to understand that it's good to also fulfill the meaning by the keeping of the day. So, we are at the last trial. We are really in the end time. And the devil has prepared deceptions for everyone. And I fear that many who will not raise up today and understand those things that are no need to believe in them, the law, the human nature, and the problem that lies inside. If that is not known, if that will not convince us that we need to change the heart in order to come back to God, then all the efforts of God would be for those without success. So maybe we be not about the deceived ones. Let us search our hearts like never before. Let us see if there is inside of us iniquity. If there's something that we hearken to, instead of putting it on the cross and becoming free from it. So let us search the heart, because it's end time. The window will soon be closed, and no one will ever have a second chance. Amen.